In France, we've got a lot of clichés about Australia. Clichés like kangaroos.
Oh, kangaroo, ouais.
A small one.
Kangaroo, elles dorment.
Surf, the sun, the sea, you know, all these things. And I heard that once you were a surfer, Pete.
Well, yes, in Australia we're very lucky because we've got a lot of very, very beautiful beaches, and they're not very crowded, and they stretch along the whole side of our coastline, which runs for many thousands of kilometres. And one of the things which you can do when you're a kid in Australia, when you've got your spare time, is you can go to the beach. And all kids go to the beach and go surfing, and I did that when I was a kid as well. And you go up north in the back of a panel van, which is sort of like a panel van, yeah.
104.
Right, yeah. And you camp out and you just go surfing, and you don't have very much money, but you have a good time. Unfortunately now, of course, we've got people who want to build hotels and motels and turn some of the beach areas into resorts and things like that. But it's still a very beautiful country for surf, and it's a big part of what kids do here. And we write about that. The thing about Midnight Oil is it's one of the Australian bands which writes about Australian things, like the beach, because they're the things which make sense to us. Instead of writing about Hollywood or New York or London or Paris or whatever, we write about Sydney and Surfers Paradise and koalas and things like that.
One of the reasons we came here is because we think there are a lot of music things happening at the moment, and there is a big musical scene, and in our opinion, very more important than what's happening in England or in the States, for example. Have you got the same feeling, and how could you explain it?
Well, I think what's happened is that Australian bands have been making music for a long time, and they've been drawing sometimes their influences from America, sometimes from Europe, but they've started to develop their own sound. And here in Australia, it's not very expensive to go and see a band, and there's lots of places for bands to play, and so consequently there's lots of live music, and that builds up a band because they get used to playing. They don't make records because it's the latest craze or a new set of clothing they have to wear. They make it because they've been playing music to people out in the streets. And because we have a real street scene here, we're developing real bands, and now that, you know, people are discovering it. There's been music here for a long time, but it's just now that it's having to be discovered elsewhere.
How do you feel this mix between rock and politics? Politics being involved in rock music?
Well, I think the thing with Midnight Oil is that we've always written songs about things which we believe in strongly, and so consequently we've talked about things which are political, like nuclear armaments, the environment, and imperialism, especially in Australia, because we're a very young country. And I think that nowadays, because it's such a critical time for people, unless you've got your eyes closed or you're singing love songs, you will end up singing about important things because there's so many of those things which affect you, and you've got to say something about them.
You worry about nuclear armaments here?
Well, we do, for a number of reasons. Most people don't know that Australia hosts American bases and communications facilities which are used to communicate with the submarines which carry nuclear arms. And probably French people aren't aware that people in Australia are upset because the French have detonated nuclear explosions in the Pacific, and we find that, you know, radiation doesn't go away. It stays around forever, but it stays around in our backyard. And I think that here, because Australia is a long way away from the rest of the world, we can see the world, and sometimes it seems mad because there's this fantastic number of armaments, and you've got the two superpowers arguing, and we believe really strongly that this shouldn't be the case because we want to keep on making music and we want people to keep on enjoying life. So, yeah, of course we're concerned about those things, like everyone else, I'm sure.
I have a very last question, but it's a question I asked.
Vous posez la question
it's a question I asked to everyone here. Are you afraid of sharks?
Ouais.
Ouais.
Nous avons peur des requins.
Only the human variety.
Thank you very much.